Go. What's up? This is Noah DeFreitas with Noah Fitness, and you're on another bodybuilding Q&A. And I have my co-host, as always, Matt Berzicott, and we have our special guest, IFBB Pro, Gerald Williams. And we'll go ahead and just kick this off with Matt giving some details on Gerald, kind of what he's gone through. And details behind that is Matt has worked with Gerald for years now, brought him from being a professional all the way onto the IFBB Pro, to the Olympia stage. So Matt, go ahead and give us some details for our man Gerald here.
Yeah. All right. So real quick, and we'll get into more of the details later. I just wanted to make sure everybody knew about his competitive accolades thus far. Let's see. His earliest win was he won the Teenage Nationals in 2005. That's how we know each other. Clear back from actually 2004. We've known each other since then. And then he won, then he took he did a few shows after that and then took a bunch of time off, 7 years off. One thing that I want everybody to know about Gerald is how, what's the word I'm looking for? Diverse he is. He's into a lot of other things, not just bodybuilding. So he took 7 years off. He thought, he did what a lot of people should have done, including myself. He thought, I'm not going to really make a living from this, so I should probably pump the brakes. He went to school, worked towards his PhD, and then he took 7 years away. And then in 2015, he told me that he wanted to come back and compete, and it was about 20 weeks out of the USA's. And I was like, okay, well, what do you look like? I had no idea what he looked like. And I think he was like 280, pretty chubby. And I was like, okay. And in my mind, I didn't tell him this till after, but in my mind, I was like, there's no way this is going to happen. And a month went by and I saw him, and then another month, and I'm like, he made it to once he was 8 weeks out, I thought, oh my God, we might pull this off. He did the USA's, got second to Cody Montgomery. And then we went to North Americans the month after, and we won the heavyweight class there. I still think he should have won the overall, but he won the heavyweight class, turned pro. His rookie year, we did a few shows, didn't do super good, but didn't do horrible. And then 2017, his second year as a pro, we actually won the California Pro bodybuilding show, went to the Olympia where he got 15th. So, not a lot of people, there's not a lot of guys that have won open pro bodybuilding shows. That's not a very common thing. There's a lot of really good pros that never won a pro show. And so he's won, and he's one of my best friends that I've always, just like you have pushed me to use social media, I've pushed him to use it. So I had to get him on here.
Cool.
Struggle with the social media. Absolutely.
Don't we all?
So hard, man.
Well, sweet. I had no idea you guys worked that long together. That's all the way from after.
No, I didn't help him. No, I didn't help him back then.
Matt was supposed to win the Teenage Nationals. I remember everybody saying it was Matt that was going to win that show. And I didn't know who you were then. I looked at the picture. I'm like, dude, this kid looks crazy.
Yeah, and then Jason Huh won our first year.
Yeah, he looked nutty. Yeah, and I knew what it took at that point.
Yeah, and then I thought I was gonna. Nobody thought you were gonna win the
Nobody.
05 because Gerald. Noah, did you know Gerald was the guy that kind of people laughed? He got on stage fat.
Yeah, I did.
Really?
Yeah, I was that guy.
He was that guy. He was a meme, and then this was way
Did
back.
you say he was a meme?
Yeah.
He was.
No lie.
This was. I'm not exaggerating.
If you look at my page, there's a picture of me doing that show. You'd be like, oh, something's off in this guy's head. Why would he even get up there?
That's what I thought. I felt sorry. I was like, man, he looks terrible, but he's a really nice guy. I'll be his friend.
Yeah.
And then we kind of, talked here and there for a year. And then this was the days, obviously, way before social media, 05, where you had no idea what anybody looked like. And so in my mind, it was like me and Steve Kuklo. And then all of a sudden we show up to the show and Gerald looks like a different human. He looked like Sean Roden when he won the North Americans, basically. And you're like, wow, that was one of the craziest things I had ever seen, still to this day.
So let's pause right there. So what happened there, Gerald? What made you kind of go next level? Like, walk us through that a little bit. Like, you clearly had the rough patch. What made you, kind of stand out now this time?
Well, it wasn't a rough patch. I take everything as experience.
Mhm.
I think a lot of the best lessons come from getting hit in the mouth, right? And in that sense, like I had, done the California teenage show, and I hadn't really traveled much. I didn't have a lot of exposure. There weren't a lot of people really pushing me, and at that point, I hadn't really had access to folks that really knew what the hell they were doing.
Mm.
So, and I'd kind of, done everything myself. So at that point,
Mhm.
um, I had worked with somebody that was, that never turned pro. He was really competitive back in the 90s, and the 90s were crazy, right? And he had a bad attitude, and so they never really pushed him over. But he knew what he was doing, and he had really kind of helped coach me a little bit. And I knew what to expect, right? Like when I did that '04 show, I stayed at a hotel that was completely across town. I was trying to take a taxi to the venue. I just didn't know what to do, and so
Mhm.
that was a really important lesson for me to just have that experience of like, wow, like this is what this is about. And I'd made it up in my mind that next year, like I want to win the teenage nationals. Like I can do this. I want to win this. Um, and so I trained. It was my first year of undergrad.
So hang on, wait. How long were you training before the '04 one?
I've been
Before
working
the
out the whole
first?
time. I've been working out the whole time. That was a total like that was me like working out, just trying to figure things out. But I wasn't doing the right things, right?
Okay.
Like, and I didn't really know, and you've worked with me, dude. I'm a savant. I don't know how this thing works. I don't know why it works like this. I follow the instructions and magic happens. I'm a complete savant. People think Gerald should know what he's doing because of what he's done. No, Matt knows what he's doing, and I'm good at following his instructions. That's really what this is.
That is
Um,
awesome.
Okay. So basically, '05, you had somebody that knew what they were doing help you.
I had someone that gave
Okay.
me a little bit of guidance, and actually that guy died in 2006. Because if you recall, I think that was the year I did the juniors, and I got fifth at the junior nationals in Chicago.
Yeah. Then you went to.
And
Then you had Dave help you, Palumbo.
yeah, then after that, I think I had
And then
him
you
help
got.
me at that
And,
show.
and then you got 10th at nationals, right?
Yep, I got 10th at nationals that year, and that was or it was '08
Oh,
maybe.
08,
Yeah,
08, I think.
because I was
And then
training with Tony at that point in Atlanta when he was really killing.
Tony
Yeah,
Freeman.
Tony Freeman. So I was training with Tony Freeman when I was in Atlanta. So after the teenage nationals, I started training with Lee Haney, and then after I trained with Lee Haney for a while, I hooked up with Tony through Dave.
What
And
about, were you training with Cormier for a while too, or no?
that was after the teenage
Oh,
nationals.
okay.
That was
Sorry. Keep going.
after, yeah. So I had a chance to train with. I had a train. So I mean, I can go through the sequence. I had a chance to train with Chris Cormier. That was '05. '05, '06. I had a chance to train with Lee Haney when he had his gym in Atlanta, Animal Kingdom. Then I trained with Tony out in the Forum in Alpharetta, '07, '08. And then I moved back to California in '08, but I did the nationals in Atlanta later that year and got 10th. So, I mean, I had a really, really great pedigree in the sense of people that I had a chance to learn from the time I like put my foot in the ground and said I wanted to do this. So great mentors along the way for that. But from '04 to '05, it was just like someone I knew like locally, like it was actually my buddy's cousin that that had been competing and kind of knew what to do. And my body just responded really well to like having structure and like doing the right things for it. Like, oh, you don't train everything every day. That makes sense. Shit like that.
Gotcha. So my next question here is then how did you guys actually officially meet? Now, Gerald, did you find Matt or did Matt find you, Gerald?
No, we met at the '04 Teenage Nationals.
Yeah.
We
Okay.
competed against we
compete-
competed against each other.
2 years in a row.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Then what about like working with each other? Or was there conversations that just kind of naturally led there? How did basically
No,
you guys end up working together?
The first
That
time, so Matt, this is the first time. Remember, I was doing the juniors in Chicago, and I was like totally struggling. My body was like not doing what I wanted it to do at all. And I was like, Matt, I don't really feel very good. He's like, well, what did you eat? What did you do? And I was like, well, these are the things. He's like, drink this. And he had me drink like this salt water. And I looked a little softer, but I felt a lot better. And so I kept a mental note of that. That was maybe '07. that I
It
did the
was
juniors.
07, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so from that point on, I made a note, like if I ever come in, because '08 I decided to shut it down. And so at that moment, I don't know if you know this, at that moment I was like, all right, if I ever come back to this, I'm gonna call Matt. Because along the way, like Matt and I have been friends along the way. We talked, it wasn't like we just stopped talking. We talked about stuff for, all the way through. And I saw his progression of just like, this is a guy that he gets it. Like some people, it's like this is their thing. Me, I knew it was not my thing. Like I didn't possess the skills to completely run my own show. And I knew that, but I could see Matt being one of those people. And then when we got into coaching and I saw the results of those people, I was like, I trust this guy. He knows what he's doing. If I go back, this is the guy I'm going to ask to help me. Because Ray Artie lives, 45 minutes away down in San Jose. And so he was trying to get me to work with Hani. And I don't particularly vibe with Hani very well. Hani lives around here. He lives out in Danville. He lives like maybe 45 minutes in the other direction. So, Hani was the person they were trying to like funnel me, like, oh, if you're gonna go back, you should work with Hani. I was like, I don't fucking want to work with Hani. No disrespect. We don't have the personalities that vibe together. So if I'm gonna work with somebody, I'm gonna work with somebody that I feel like I can trust. It's not gonna get me hurt. So that's why I picked Matt.
Gotcha. So you had this kind of longer term relationship behind you. You saw him help you out. You liked that, and basically you saw his progression and his coaching, and decided that he was the guy for you.
Yeah, and he was competing the whole time. Like Matt was taking like top 5 at the USA's every year, and I look at him like, fuck, man, I missed this shit. Like I knew it wasn't for me, but he stayed in it and he was going, and he looks good. I mean, like Matt, like when he's on, he's on.
Mhm.
And so again, like he worked with different people and studied different philosophies, and he became super mobile and was like in California at one point and was they just Florida, like he was in it. Like there's some guys that this is like a side gig for them, and there's some
Mhm.
guys that you can tell like this is like really like their thing. And for
Mhm.
Matt, I could tell this is really his thing.
Cool. That's awesome. So when you guys started to work together, how did that exactly work? Because just to give you some background here, Gerald, like we talk about people finding their coaches and, they expect it to work amazing, right off the bat. Was that the case, or did you guys have to like learn a dynamic together? Did the first show go, as planned, or did this all progress to where like you guys became this like synergy over time that just got better and better?
Um, I mean, I mean, the first show I did with Matt, I won.
Oh, that's
And
good.
then the second show I did with Matt, I got second at the USA's, and the third show I turned pro. So
Worked. Yeah. I
It
mean, we
worked.
kind of we got it we got it right. I mean,
That's
right
cool.
off the bat.
Yeah.
So
But
Matt, question for you is
a lot of that is
yeah, go
hang
ahead.
on. A lot of that is just because of him. Because
Mm.
when you tell him to do something, there was never a doubt like he does it. So that can't be replaced. Like that makes my job easier. Plus, he gives me the feedback I need. Plus, he knows enough about his body to where he can give me feedback and I can take that feedback and use it. And if I think of what he's saying is a bad idea, I'll tell him. One of the things that he kept telling me over and over was, I can't eat salt. I can't eat salt. And I'm like, dude, yes, you can. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. And I'm like, and finally he just didn't, I let him not do it. I'm like, okay, don't eat salt. And that works for him. Like he doesn't ever eat salt. And 99.9% of the people, I would not let them do that. But with him, he kept telling me it over and over. So I listened, and that's the way I work. It's not a dictatorship with me. I listen to people. If I think it's a bad idea, I'm gonna tell you why I think it's a bad idea. And I told him why I thought that was a bad idea, and he still didn't do it. But then once we started doing that, it did make a big difference. So as an example, but he does know enough to be able to tell me stuff like that.
Yeah, I think it's about expectations. People expect their coaches to be unicorns, like these magical fairies that come and they're just like, here, your body's going to do this now. And you ultimately have to tune into your own body, and you have to give your coach feedback. And your coach is going to do their job as far as taking that in and then looking at what you look like, right? And then making the necessary adjustments. And so I think one of the biggest things in the success that Matt and I have had, because I would say it's a pretty meteoric type of success. Like, in 24 months, we went from the NPC local show to the Olympia stage. That's pretty fast altogether, but it's because One, I was willing to speak up, and two, we were able to form a relationship. It wasn't a one-way street, and it wasn't one of these things that I was expecting Matt to be, magical. It was really, it required a lot of communication and a lot of me, having dialogue and a lot of push and pull. And I think that comes from mutual respect. And so I think, again, you have to be willing to challenge your coaches, right? Because they don't know everything and everyone's body is different. I remember we did one show. I think this was the Ferrigno. Matt was like, go eat chips and junk food. And I was like, yes. And I looked like complete shit. And I had enough time to pull it together. I think I got eighth at that show. I think Compton won that show. Diasha got second. And I probably could have made the top 5 at that show had we really done it conservatively. But that was a bought lesson for us in the sense, we can't, some people can eat shit before and it works. We spent like 8 hours trying to clean it up so that I could, pull it together for the night show. So some of it's definitely trial and error. You have to be willing to take the risks. And that's a collective decision, and you make a note of it and then you keep moving.
Yeah. Gotcha. So what kind of communication are we talking about here? Like what did it look like between you guys? So if we were to give a picture to your relationship on a day-by-day basis, would you guys communicate daily? Would you guys communicate just on check-ins, or just when things went awry, or you had a question? Kind of how was your communication together?
I mean, I've prepped him for every show through text message.
Yeah, literally in like 5 different countries. Like I think we've been around the world in 5 different countries.
I'll usually send an email. At the beginning. and then it just turns into a text, because then it gets to the point where we got to change things quite a bit. And then we just text it.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And that works, right? I think you got to find.
Hey, also, Gerald never prepped eating carbohydrates until me. He always was a zero carb. He was a keto guy.
And gotcha. I still don't eat a lot of carbs now. Like, I try.
But I remember that was my hardest sell to you. I was like, trust me, like, you're going to look better. I promise you. Like, because Gerald was heavier, growing up. So he had this kind of carb phobia, and I had to kind of get him over that. And like you said, he doesn't eat a lot of carbs, but he preps a conventional bodybuilding diet now versus he wasn't before.
I think a lot of things I've learned from Matt, like I'm really like do more to do, like more is more and more is better. Mm-hmm. And one of the key things I've really had to learn from Matt is like, do nothing, do absolutely nothing. And good things will happen for you if you do nothing. And it's such a mind fuck, but it works.
My main job is to stop Gerald from killing himself.
That's right. Yes, that's literally no lie. Like that is really like one of the key things about the trust is like I will go like 120% in, and I think in some ways that's a really great benefit to be able to say like you can put the blinders on and really dig, because I think just even on a personal and developmental level, it takes you to it elevates your own consciousness, right? It takes you to a different level of yourself to be able to dig into something that deep. But also Matt's job is to keep me from like killing myself, right? Because there needs to be like somebody that you trust to just say like, trust me, just sit down for like 3 days, right? Don't do anything. And it's funny now, like that I'm not, pushing shows. It's like, I've learned like, hey, Matt was onto something about just eating more food and sitting on your ass for a couple of days. Like it's crazy, but it's productive. Like you grow muscle that way. Like, who would have thought?
Gotcha.
Like, so it's taken me a while to learn those things and to listen to him, because he does them, right? And we always said if we could combine ourselves, we would be the perfect singular bodybuilder with probably a couple Sandows, because they're just different skill sets altogether and different physical strengths too, like all together. But collectively, it works amazing.
Gotcha. So we're talking about the good stuff. Was there any struggles between you two? And what were those struggles like, if there were any? Did you guys ever have any like back and forths or challenges that you had to go through, or was it just butter the whole time?
No, I don't. I mean, maybe you can speak.
No,
I never had
the only thing The only thing I can think of is that point in my life where had a lot of shit going on and I wasn't
It was not
as
focused.
available. I wasn't as available as
Oh.
I should have been. But that
It worked,
was
though.
other than that, like, no, I mean, we've never even had an argument.
I think those were such big shows. Like when that was like the end of the 17th season. And so like at that point it was like a different show, a different country every week. And it was almost like the work was already done. Like I could kind of like coast a little bit, like as Matt was like trying to get his life together, which was good. But yeah, I mean, I think again, it speaks to the relationship, right? Like, so much mutual respect. You know, if I'm going to give you all that I have to do. Matt's good at what he does. He could do this shit in his sleep, literally. I generally believe I'm probably one of the more challenging people he's worked with because I'm so different. I think the things that he thinks to do for most folks, he's like, no, Gerald doesn't, you're not going to do that at all.
Yeah.
So I think in that sense, I've probably been one of his more challenging clients because a lot of my body, for whatever reason, just doesn't do conventional shit. But he's learned that and been able to like even like predict like, oh, well, you're doing this wild shit over here. Well, I'm gonna try this and see if it works. And he's just like, I didn't think that was gonna work at all for you, but it did.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. What kind of stuff did you have to figure out about Gerald, Matt?
Just his work, his work capacity is unlike anybody I've ever seen in my life. It's just the more I could have him do to the point where I knew he wasn't going to die. It's like I could take him to the brink of death and he just looks better and better and better. As an example, you might have to correct me on what your schedule was for those last shows we did, but he would get up in the morning, do cardio, pose, go to work all day long. Like all day long he works. And then you'd go home and take a nap, I think. And then you go train at 10 p.m. and then do cardio again and pose again. And actually, I feel like I'm missing something. Were you doing a third cardio session? I'm forgetting something.
It was still the 2 sessions, plus the posing. Plus
No, wait. It was the prep. You trained twice a day.
Yeah, I prayed. Yeah,
so you would do
twice a day.
Okay, so normally that's a perfect example. I would be totally against that. Okay. Gerald's like, I think I want to train twice a day.
We said that. I was like, dude, I think this is what I need to do. And he's like, no.
I'm like, oh God, I don't know. I'm like, I don't know, man. And then I'm like, okay, if it's gonna work for anybody, it'll work for you. So that's what you were doing. You were getting up, training, doing cardio, posing, going to work all day, going home, training again, doing cardio again, posing again every day. And you were getting like 3-4 hours of sleep.
Yep. I remember my justification for that though was it worked for me for the team nationals. And you were like, you know what? All right, let's try it. Because that's what I did then. I trained twice a day, 6 days a week, and it worked for my body.
Yeah, twice a day, 6 days a week.
Yeah.
And he trains hard. Okay. Like, this is not a guy that like pussyfoots in the gym. Dude, Gerald trains hard.
Yeah.
So
it works though.
Yeah, that's the example. 99% of people do that and they wither away to a skeleton.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and the thing is I mean, I could push his diet hard and the guy, he just doesn't get flat.
Suffering.
He just gets better. He just gets better. Like the more we can do.
So did you ever come to a point where Gerald was pushed too far, or Gerald, were you ever like pushed too far? I know personally working with some people that are kind of like you, who were as a coach, you kind of have to hold that person back to a degree, or else they're gonna, one guy I was working with, he started getting like stomach ulcers and stuff. He was just going way too hardcore. Was there anything that you guys ran into where you're like, we're just pushing too far?
I mean, I think the 18th season, my body wanted more of a break, and we knew that. And it was like we came to this point where because my body wasn't responding like it would normally respond, and so it was my executive decision to be like, nope, we're burning the boats. We're going to do this. Hindsight, I should have been like, you know what, this is a sign my body's not responding as well. We should probably like shut it down and like try for something else. But that's a lesson learned. Like now I know that.
Gotcha.
But I don't know that there's not much more that he could have been doing than what we were doing already.
Yeah.
So
like we'd spend and be like, I mean, I think there was at one point it was like 14 days, no carbs, no fats, train twice a day. It was like, it was as nasty as it could get.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, you know, and we were rocking it. And like, I tell you, like physically, right, that just to be in that space and to live like that. And like, I remember I wrote my first book during my Olympia prep, right? Because I was so locked in and I was so focused. And so what happens in that space, right, is you start to be able to, it's something about having less in your system. You're just tapping into a whole different side of yourself. And so I attribute, I think while I'm doing all these things and prepping for these shows, I'm still, you know, have real estate investments going on. You know, I think '05, I was getting ready for the USA's and the North Americans, and I got my real estate license. Like, you know, like I generally would excel in those spaces when there was less going on, because like something happens where I'm like that much more dialed in, you know, psychologically, and much more efficient. So, I mean, there's something to be said for that. I think in personal development, you know, you have to be willing to go through the shit to really be able to come out on the other side to get to that self-actualization part for yourself, right? That's character building.
Yeah, totally. So, so I'm the question I want to ask is,
wait, fill them in because we weren't recording at the beginning. Gerald, tell everybody what all your jobs are.
I like to break things down in categories, right? So I've got my regular like research gig that's, you know, it's the normal 9 to 5 deal. You know, I've got the adjunct position at the college, so that's the teaching thing. I've got the real estate like investment side, right, which is, you know, houses, whatever, you know, management, flips, or, you know, ownership.
But you
whatever.
deal with that a lot more than you're making it sound like. Like you're
not.
Right,
but I like to, you know, it's life, right? But I like to chunk them in categories.
Yeah, but I'm saying I don't want people to think like, oh, he just throws, like, you don't have like, you do have a team of people, but you don't have a team of people. Like you deal with the day-to-day stuff.
I'm cheap.
You deal with the day-to-day stuff.
Yeah, but I think it's also, I've developed systems that have allowed me to do those things too, right? Like I've been, you know, doing research for you know, schools and education. I've, you know, put startups together. I've worked with different universities. You know, I've got books out for things. So I mean, I've been doing that for a decade, right? So I kind of have a system on that, right? I've been teaching for like 5 or 6 years. So, you know, whether I'm teaching, you know, online classes or in the classroom, you know, as a psych professor, I'm teaching different things, right? And, you know, the real estate side of stuff, you know, I started off developing my own portfolio, and then I kind of turned into a real estate professional by default because I wanted to take the middleman out of all my own deals, right? And so in that sense, you know, so I've got the real estate investor side, but then I've got the real estate business side, you know. So and you know, it's, I actually, my kids, almost 7 months now, and so I actually was doing a lot of consulting for a lot of other schools and stuff like that around here, like private schools, and I actually shut that down when he got here, because it was really one of those things, you do a cost benefit analysis of the time and the money, and it was really like an hour for dollars type of thing, and I just really, if I didn't need it, I really felt like that energy and time could be dedicated to something more important. So, you know, I eventually may do some consulting and some different things again at some point, or some freelance, but right now, with the kid, I mean, it's just really, it's not that important to me.
Yeah. And then what else you into?
I mean, music, you know, so I've got gigs, I've got a couple bands I play with. So we've got some gigs that are still happening, but a lot of it is still, you know, music and working out are really similar, right? You've got to be able to put in the work so that when you get the call, you're prepared. You can't then get ready in like a week. So you've got to like continue to like be ready like that.
So is bodybuilding, do you view bodybuilding as an art or a sport?
It's a lifestyle.
Neither. Okay, lifestyle.
It's a lifestyle. Yeah, it's a lifestyle. I know I didn't answer your question directly. That sounds like a very me response. Like, is it this or that? No, it's this. It's a lifestyle, right? It's definitely a way of thinking. It's a way of eating. It's a way of socializing. I think in general, right, when you see other competitors, you know, I always believe like a physique is one thing you can't purchase. Like there's some aspects of physiques that can be purchased, like male or female, right? But in generally, like a muscularly developed physique is like the only thing you really can't buy, right?
Yeah. Do you know Dorian's quote on that?
Mm-mm.
something about he's not impressed with guys that have Ferraris because anybody with money can buy a Ferrari, he says.
Yep.
And you can't buy 20-inch arms. Yeah.
You cannot buy, you can't do it, male or female, right? And so I think it's always this character development part. And it's also this space you can kind of see inside of a person, because we're all a little off to want to be somewhat masochistic to that degree. Most people don't like to be uncomfortable. Like right now, I'm like, I've got acupuncture one day, I've got tissue work, I've got, like cryo and all this, there's other things that you do along the way to just keep your body like moving normal, because you're always kind of uncomfortable. Most people don't want to be uncomfortable, but growth happens when you're uncomfortable.
So Gerald, I got a question for you. Clearly you're doing things that most bodybuilders are not doing. They're not working like 6 jobs on top of bodybuilding. So, and personally, as an entrepreneur, I'd like to know this as well, is like, how do you, I guess you wrote a book on this basically, is how do you get the time to do that stuff? Did you also, like, how do you balance it? Are you still pushing just as hard in your professional life, as well as your bodybuilding life when that was happening?
So I think everything comes with like a tiered system of engagement,
Okay.
right? Like I sat at 22 years old and was like, this is what my plan is to get to where I want to be, right? And so I mapped out how that works, right? Every entrepreneur, and I don't consider myself an entrepreneur. My wife says that I am, and I definitely don't consider myself to be, but I guess on the outside, that's what it is. On the whole, right? I generally think that the 9-to-5s are really great for their paperwork, right? They provide a W-2, they provide stable income, right? They provide some of the foundational structures that you need to be able to take off on the things that you really care about. I think, again, like for me, I looked at the things that would generate the most revenue and require the least amount of my time, because you look at yourself, there's only one you, and you only have a certain amount of time. And so if there are these labor intensive processes that aren't automated, there's only so much revenue you can generate from that. And so to be able to work within a system, I had a system of, I wanted to do certain things every year for 10 years. And I feel like, you have a good decade, it can set you up for life, essentially. That's kind of the same principle of compound interest, right? You invest hard in your 20s and you let that grow. And by the time you're 50, you're like, what happened, right? So similar principle. It wasn't this like, I'm going to do this in 1 year. I really said, this is my decade. I had a decade of, I wanted to set things up in a certain way. And it wasn't until I was 23, 24. So it wasn't until I was like 5 or 6 years into that and it was rolling that I even reached out to Matt and was like, I wanted, this was like this was like a bucket list thing. Being an IFBB pro was a bucket list thing that I felt like I left something unfinished. Right. But it wasn't until I had like dug in on these other things, the systems were rolling, I had a path moving, and ultimately the goal was economic independence across the board. Right. It's to be able to say, like, I can choose to go to work, to have that flexibility and freedom, to not be like, oh, I can't hang out with, my future family. Now I have one. Right. But I can't hang out with my future family because I have to go do stuff to pay bills, and ultimately the goal was to figure out how to live, to not worry about money. I think that's when people start making decisions based upon the economic values. I think the judgment is sometimes clouded, right? And I didn't grow up like that, but I had a very clear vision of how I wanted to live. And so because I figured out how I wanted to live, things started falling into place for me to get there. And I don't do things that deviate very much from each other, right? Doing K-12 research and teaching in higher education are very similar, right? I'm consulting for K-12 institutions and or higher ed spaces, right? So those are not very different from each other at all. Real estate on the whole, right? There are a lot of different areas. You've got a lending side, you've got the flip side, you've got the contractor side, you've even got like, folks on the title side. So it's just, they're all natural synergies, right? I'm not picking things that feel like obtuse. There's this very, very natural synergy in the things that I do, but they're all monetized. I've always said, if you have 3 things, something that you can exercise your creative outlets, something for you physically, and something economically, you're in really good shape, right? If you can nail those 3 down with something, then you can find a way to kind of satisfy all of those sides of yourself to kind of be whole for the folks around you.
Gotcha. Awesome. So what advice would you give to like, say a bodybuilder who's deep in wanting to achieve something in bodybuilding, but they also want to achieve, success financially. Any advice for that person? I know you kind of had things rolling. I would say most people don't. So what would you say to kind of help somebody along in that path, if you have any advice?
And I learned this by experience, right? I in my '08 prep for the national, I was '08. I totally, like, I was on academic probation in grad school. I had maxed out all my credit cards. I was all in, right? I was all in on the table on this gamble of, like, if I get to be an IFBB pro, my life will be saved afterwards, right?
Mhm.
And so that was a really tough lesson to learn. Like, not, not top 5, just top 10, right? Nothing's coming. Life doesn't change, and all those bills are there. And I'm like, wow, this wasn't really worth it at all. So I think the first thing I would say to most folks is that you really do need to understand that the way the structure for professional bodybuilding, whether you're a female competitor or a male competitor, if it's men's physique, classic physique, bikini, wellness, figure, women's bodybuilding, whatever it is, the industry is not set up now for this to be the only thing that you do for economic prosperity. And I know a host of folks that are trainers in gyms or that own gyms, and there's no healthcare, there's no retirement in that, right? And it's everything is predicated on what you do with your body and your time, and they get frustrated with it. So my first advice to people is to really understand is to get your, as I say this, I feel like I say this all the time, but I'm going to say it here in this way. I say, get your life together first, right? Get yourself on a solid footing professionally, in something that's going to allow you to not necessarily just, it won't require you to physically move things around. You're not doing things that are labor intensive. I think it's harder to grow and self actualize when you're stressed, right? And so it just makes sense to be able to try and put your life in a good place before you're pursuing the stage, because the reality is that, as we've learned, the bodybuilding's not going anywhere. The sport's not going anywhere. The IFBB is not going anywhere. Whether it's, the universe, if it's what's the Muscle Mania shows, the Elite Pro, whatever it is, it's not going anywhere. It's here. And I think, people ultimately are better competitors when they are able to have a solid, structure around them. So
Yes,
I would say,
when there's stability.
yeah, I would say don't rush. Again, like, understand that some people find the sport later in life, and that's great, right? Because I think they do well because they know what's going on. The folks that are younger and think this is going to be it, a 5 or 10 year pro career making 50 grand to 100 grand a year, maybe, that's not going to take care of you for the rest of your life.
Gotcha. Killer
know?
advice. Get your life together first. Bodybuilding is absolutely going to be there. So I really, really like that advice. Now, another question here, Gerald, let's just go pure bodybuilding here. Out of your career going, all the way to the Olympia stage, what advice would you give somebody who wants to become the best bodybuilder that they could be? Or maybe what was your biggest, game changer that helped you? Or maybe a few of them. That's totally cool too.
Yeah, I feel really fortunate that I've had a lot of great people in my life around me, whether it was Tony Freeman, Chris Cormier, Dave Palumbo, Matt. I got really Lee Haney. I got really fortunate to have folks that were really, really knowledgeable around me consistently, and that all of them, I think, looked out for my well-being in ways that I didn't necessarily understand. And so I would say, for those that really, and none of us, I can see the other side now, having, like, been to the place that I wanted to go. Like, I set this goal, and I essentially, like, all the goals that I wanted in the sport, I've accomplished except for, like, one. And so with that, I would say, be focused, be ready to dig in. I had no idea how long things were going to take, and it really didn't matter to me. Like, it was like I was going to do whatever it took for me to be the best that I could be. And I left it all, like, whenever I prepped, and you can ask Matt, like, I left it all out there. Like, there was nothing else I physically, emotionally, spiritually could have done to, like, get to the place that I was going to go. So if that's what you want, then you say you want it, then you got to work for it. And you got to be willing to go all in every single day, in every single way, to make that happen.
Wow, that aligns, man. You're saying get your shit together so that you can go all in. And I can even just think from personal experience, if you're dealing with a bunch of other stuff and you can't give 100% focus to it, are you going to get 100% out of it? Clearly just saying that it's a no. So I like that, and getting around the right people. So did you do anything to reach out to like these people? Did they just kind of fortuitously come in your life? Or are you the person that's like ringing, like phones to say, hey, like I want to work with you or train with you? How do you get around the right people, if you have any advice there?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in manifestation. You put it out in the universe, and you say you want something, and it happens for you. And I wholeheartedly believe that, that is the way the world works. I think a lot of people shortstop themselves because they feel like they're limited in what they can do or what's available to them. And in that sense, right, I met Chris after the Teenage Nationals, right? Like, and he took me under and explained a lot of things to me. He actually I met him after the Teenage Cal. I won the Teenage California on the way to the Teenage Nationals, and I learned a lot from him from there. I got a hold of Tony through Dave. I had called Dave. I wanted to start working with him. He's like, hey, Tony's in Atlanta. He's pretty cool. Here's his number. Tony's like, yeah, come on down. Let's train. Literally, while he's taking, top 2 at the Arnold, winning the Ironman and everything like that, we're training for that. Well, he's placing top 6 at the Olympia. Like, we're training for that. So those things that, like, Matt, Matt could have been a total dick and been like, I don't want to talk to you. Like, true story. Like, I was in the elevator after the Teenage Nationals with Steve Kluko's parents, and they were like, we don't like you. Like, our son was supposed to win. Like, I'm like this 19-year-old kid by myself, out there.
Never
And
told me that.
Brutal.
I called my mom, and my mom's crying. Like, she's like, oh my God, I can't believe I let you go out there by yourself to like go try and do this. And I called her and was like, Mom, I won. She's like, what do you mean you won? I was like, I just won the Teenage Nationals. And she starts crying. Like, oh my God. I'd see Steve's parents in the elevator, and they're like, you weren't supposed to win this show. My son was supposed to win. I was like, what type of fucked up people are you to say this to a kid in the elevator by himself?
Seriously.
But, at the end of the day, I'm like, yo, like, that's cool. And I got on a fucking plane and left from there. I went home for a minute and went down to LA and shot. And, Steve's been super successful. He's one of those guys that stayed at it as well the whole time, super successful. But, in that moment, right, it's always, you got different experiences. I don't know if I should have told that story, but whatever.
Hey, if you want it secret, it can stay secret. But that's
no, that's fine.
Hang on. Yep. I gotta add something though. Gerald does have no problem making phone calls though, and knocking on doors, because after one of the shows, he's like, hey, I called Jim Mannion. And I'm like,
oh yeah.
Like, what? You called Jim Mannion? Like, you just called him up? Like, what?
Yeah. Like, I don't remember how I guess somebody gave me. I have Mannion's number, and I was like, hey, what's going on? I don't remember what it was for, but I definitely have no problem advocating for myself. And I think generally as an athlete, and particularly as a certain level as an athlete, you become an example for other people, whether or not you feel like you are or not. There are people that are looking at the trail that you have come through to be where you are and trying to walk that same line. And I think in some of that, you have to realize that advocating for yourself in any aspect of life is going to be really, really important for you. So I'm always one that, I remember I was after, I think it was the LA show before the USA's. We did super heavy. And I talked to Tamer after the show, Tamer El-Gindi, and he was like, hey, you look good, but I think you need to be a heavyweight. You're not tall enough to be a super heavy. So what did we do? We spent, 3 weeks suffering to make 225 in a day.
That was we were going to do that anyways, but but like, that's just, you have no problem. He'll go up and talk to anybody.
Yeah. What's the worst they can say is like, I don't want to talk to you. Then I'm back to where I started.
Me and Noah find that so intriguing because we're not like that at all.
I think most of the time we get in our own way. Right. And if we can learn to get out of our own way and understand that the things that we want are actually coming to us, and you just kind of have to follow that little path. The worst thing that could happen is you're right exactly where you are. The best thing could happen is you end up where you want to be. So I don't know, just that in between doesn't necessarily, like, that space in between, that opportunity is so great to me that it's worth taking all those risks.
Is there
Were you
something
like that as a kid?
that's kind of what I was.
I don't know. Maybe. It's so interesting having this kid now because he just does shit, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know who you're gonna be. I'm so curious because like I'm all types of messed up in all types of ways, and I wonder if he's gonna have that same disposition because he does. I think he does some of the same things. His like initial mannerisms are like whatever, and I'm like, yeah, dude, good, whatever, you know. Don't let anybody tell you no. I don't even need. Don't roll around on the changing table. You know, like that type of stuff. So I think I've always been able to. I've always known what I've wanted. I think that's the thing. I've always been really clear about what I've wanted. Like even bodybuilding outside of this. Like I called Matt and I was like, Matt, I want my pro card. That was my text in. I don't even think we talked on the phone. I think it was a text. And like Matt just
Yeah.
it was just a text, and we literally started with a text. And so, you know, that was my mind. Teenage Nationals, I showed up in 04 and totally got the experience and looked like complete trash. But I left that saying, I can do this. You know, and so, and that's just how I've always been with things, I think. So in that way, yeah, the things I can remember when I've wanted something, I've put it out there that I've wanted it, and I just get out of the way and I do the work, but I get out of my own way to make those things happen.
Yeah, that's a great point because you're not somebody that is so delusional that you think you know everything about if you know that you're not an expert on a subject that you want to be good at, you'll seek out someone that is an expert and you'll ask for their help. You don't have an ego like that.
No, it hurts everybody. Like, I don't know shit. I tell you, I'm a savant, dude. I'm good at following instructions. People expect me, like, Gerald, how do I do this? I'm like, I just look like that. I don't know what to do. I know what works for me. I don't know what works for you. And I'm not willing to take the time to learn. So that's why I don't take on people. Like, I refer them out, you know? Like, I'm not as passionate about that type of stuff.
Did you have like a business person like that for you or anything?
What do you mean?
Or did you like a mentor in like the business side of things, or you just kind of figure that stuff out on your own?
You know, it's the same type of deal. People that have been able to, that are a little further ahead, have just kind of like fallen into my life at the right time. And, you know, they've answered the questions that I've needed or whatever situation. And, you know, it's again, I've said what I've wanted and these people magically appear. I shit you not. That's exactly what happens.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Manifestation, get out of your own way. That's
Yeah.
huge, man. So let's go into a little fun question here. This is going to be the trend on this show, and you've got to have one because of how peeled you've gotten. But we're basically having a question of, do you have a scenario where we basically call it, you know, you're in shape when? And it's basically where you're so freaking depleted that you end up doing something like totally stupid or embarrassing or like fault something. For example, Matt tried to like fight his neighbors, like, and, pulled over on the highway and started to call out his neighbors. So is there any situations where you were just like crazy peeled and something ridiculous happened because of it?
No, man. I feel like the more in shape I got, the more
Sharper you got.
It's like literally like the acumen increased, the like more dialed in I got because I was so dialed in on everything. It was almost like you're just falling into a space of complete zen. Like literally, no, I like literally like life would slow down for me. Whoa. Like those last like 6 weeks, it was like the Matrix slowed down and the game was so slow and nothing came at me too fast.
Yeah, like so you felt like you had more hours in the day.
It just felt like I just, you know, and I talked to, so Brandon Curry and I talked about this. The concept of time, neither of us have a good concept of time, which is, I think, an asset to someone in this sport, right? So like I would suffer for those 13 days and they would suck, but you're like, dude, I didn't think you'd make it this long, you know? And I was like, yeah, whatever, we'll just go as long as I can. And so because of that, man, I think as the more dialed I get, the more things slow down for me and time was like irrelevant. Like I just became so much more efficient. Everything, like it was just the days just blended together. So it wasn't really a big deal for me. So I'm not really like a wild person. I like the folks that know me would say like I struggle to have fun, right? Like I'm really good at focusing and locking in and doing stuff, but me like doing recreational shit and being completely wild, that's just not me. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I think again, the more in shape I got, the more in tune I got and the more efficient I got and the more dialed in I got with my entire life. So it's probably the exact opposite.
That's epic. So, that's, it's attunes to how far you made it. And now my question for you is, do you want to go do you do things to what do you do now that you're clearly working out and you're not like prepping or getting down to that like level, but is there anything else that gets you like into that zone, or did that zone help you that you kind of miss since you were so dialed?
It changes you. Like, those years doing that have changed me as a person for the better. Right.
Okay.
I could totally, gear up for another tour of duty. Absolutely. Do I need to? Probably not. I love training. Like, it's always going to be something that's a part of my life. Right. It's just, and the eating structure always appealed to me. So I still eat meals the same way now, pretty much. I feel like there are probably spaces I could be leaner because I have the fat gene. So I'll probably work on that. But man, I just think who I am as a person is a result of like those experiences. And so again, I think things still continue to move slow for me now because it was so intense to do all of those things. Like, it was like really like 4 years of like nonstop. Like, we did like 13 shows in 3 years, 14 shows.
Wow.
And I was guest posing. I was doing shit out of the country. Like, it was literally like 3 years nonstop, and that's insane. But it was great, it was a process, So now everything moves a little slow, and nothing seems impossible.
That's so cool.
I think the only time you relax is if you go on a vacation.
Yeah,
which
we did that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He does make it a point to go on vacations,
Wow.
which he does relax then, and then you relax for about 3 hours during 49er games. That's about it.
Yeah. And we find gyms.
Is there any? I have a question for you. Is there anything looking back that you would have done different at any point in bodybuilding and while you were out of bodybuilding? Is there anything you would have done different?
Man, I would have started acupuncture in 2015. I think the body parts that were lagging for me, what I've learned now through acupuncture is that certain muscles aren't getting the signals the way they need to be stimulated. And I didn't know that then. Like, so I have a great, like, the sports acupuncturist I have now works for the Niners. So it's like really helpful, and they work with the Warriors. So they're used to working with athletes. I didn't think that through, and there's nobody, I think Tony was the only person that really taught me about the recovery side of things.
Yeah, he's into all that stuff.
And, so I adopted a lot of those things into my practice, right? And so, but acupuncture wasn't anyone's practice, right? And so it wasn't something that I had adopted. I had something I had to learn on my own. But I would say like I would have started that earlier, because I see the benefits for the lagging body parts, because I think they lag because they're neurologically not getting the signals to get enough, to be stimulated enough. And I'm finding like when you hook them up to the little machine and they get like the frequencies, like the amps and the frequencies in there, it's a total game changer. So I would say that's something that I feel like knowing what I know now, I would say for other people, like for their lagging body parts, like acupuncture with some of the juice to it, like would be good for them. I would have learned to listen to my body when it said like, shut me down. I think I was so used to being able to like turn the dial up a little bit more and just like stay there and like live in that space of being uncomfortable, that I wasn't aware enough when it was really like metabolically my body just wasn't efficient. Yeah. So I probably would have, if I could, now I know what it feels like. You have to go through it to understand it, but to know what that really looks like and feels like, the signs of it, like, and Matt, I think you saw the signs, but you just trusted that I would just like, he'll just figure it out. And we did it. And it wasn't really a terrible, terrible season in relation to like what it could have been, but still it wasn't what I was, it wasn't what I was capable of. Because my body just wasn't functioning. It was probably functioning like 70% of what it should have been. So I think that's something I would have learned to like take the necessary breaks that are required. I almost feel like bodybuilding is like it's a biannual sport. I feel like everybody's like, this is like a game of like how tough your insides are, like all together. And no, it's really like that's ultimately what this is. Like how strong, like it's like how durable is your body? Can you withstand all the injuries? Can it handle all the stress, and can it handle it over time? And I think, if you could take a year off in between of like putting it through hell, I think it extends the longevity significantly. Yeah, and I mean other stuff. I don't. Yeah,
I would say that unless you're a one show a year person, or if you do if you do two shows that are really close.
Yeah.
But I would agree it's very difficult to do like compete all year long.
Yeah, dude. I mean, it was
multiple years in a row. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lesson though.
Yeah.
And other stuff. I think, man, I think with the business of bodybuilding, I really struggled to like understand. I think growing up in the 90s of bodybuilding, I still thought that 90s bodybuilding was the way things were working. And it definitely doesn't work like that now. So I like the carrot was so real for me. Like I had all these like expectations, like when I got to this level, it will be like this. When I get here, it will be like this. And it was never that. And it was always disappointing. Like every level of achievement was like so underwhelming that I had to take this whole stance of like the journey itself was really the prize, because the prize itself was totally crap.
Yeah.
And it was repetitive. It was at every level, like the success was underwhelming.
What do you think you'd feel? How do you think you'd feel if you got in the top 6 at the Olympia though? Same?
Yeah, I think it'd be the same, honestly, because the distance to travel from the top 15 to the top 10 and the top 10 to the top 6, it's so far, like making the top 6 just means that you just have to pour more gas on the fire to like make it like, and then you have to ask yourself like, so like, is like, how do you do that? Right. Like, it's not like a 12-month deal. Like that's like that's like a 5-year plan.
Yeah. Right.
And I think people forget, like, again, that's why I think not having a good concept of time. Like when Brandon told me that and I really sat and reflected, I was like, I don't think I have a good concept of time either, and so it's a benefit. But when you really think about it, like this is a long haul game. And so that's I think just framing that, like, if you're making it anywhere, it's like, 5 years will go by like nothing in this sport.
Right. Yeah. I've had 16 years go by like that.
Yeah, dude, you've been competing the entire time. Like,
well,
that's
no,
amazing.
I took 3 years off,
but you've stayed current. Like I'm like an all or nothing type of dude. So it's like, I'm in it, I'm out of it. Right?
Yeah. You were completely removed. You didn't even know who was Mr. Olympia. I don't think.
I didn't, I don't think I knew Jay won the Olympia. I think, and Jay and I like now are super cool. Like it wasn't like we got cool later, like after like he had stopped competing, but like in general, like I didn't know who was Mr. Olympia.
Yeah.
At all.
No, Gerald sends me stuff on Instagram that I'm like, yeah, dude, he's been around for like 10 years.
Like and so it's crazy. Like it's just but again, I'm an all or nothing type of person, right? If I'm in, I'm like completely locked in. And if I'm out, I'm completely out.
Yeah.
There's no middle ground.
So what would you say you are right now?
Man, it's interesting. It's a lifestyle adjustment. I'm definitely nowhere near what it takes to like compete at that level, but I could see like being able to do that. I just now I think I'm in on this new lifestyle. I'm all in on this 2 days on. Like I'm still doing the same thing we talked about. 2 days on, 1 day off, keep things pretty intense. Like it's like an hour, do some cardio in there. Like I'm in on what it works for me here right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I know what all in to like step on stage, and not to step on stage, but be competitive, right? Like I know what that is.
Yeah, it's a completely different
level. It's religion. It's full religion.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So yeah, I would say I'm out. I would say if I had to pick one, I'm completely out, because all the things that are required to move at that level, I'm not doing, and I don't want to do them. So, you know what I'm saying? Like I love the eating, the structure of like, I still have 7 meals and I still train enough to like, I'm still almost, I think 270. So, it's just, it's not being crazy peeled. Right. And, I have projects that I want to work on. I have body parts that I totally want to like develop and figure out the formula to, because that's a puzzle for me. So I'm all in on what I want to be all in on right now, but not nowhere near what it would require for me to be competitive.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Well, we'll go ahead and end it there. That was amazing stuff. Incredible takeaways. I have a whole page of notes right here. And one of my biggest takeaways is just your level of like clearing the way and just going all into your goals. I think that really is a testament to what got you there so quickly, just like exploding through the ranks. And I'd say that's something to give to the audience is when you're ready to do something, go all in on it and make way for that. So I appreciate it a ton, Gerald. Is there anything you'd like to add before we end here for anybody listening in?
Yeah, I think having the right people around you is important, no matter what you're doing, whether it's bodybuilding, underwater basket weaving, whatever. Having the right people around you ultimately impact, who you are to a degree, and vice versa, you impact them. And so I think if you don't have a lot of good people around you, then kind of isolating yourself is a great play. If you have a lot of great people around you, lean to them to really help push you, and tell people what you want. I think the more you can communicate what it is that you want, the more clear it becomes to you. Like I wasn't really clear on things until I said them out loud. Teenage Nationals being an example, the USA's, returning pro was an example, going to Olympia was an example. Those were all things that I like overtly said, like, this is what I want. And I was really clear. It wasn't a long, verbose sentence. It was like, this is one thing. And I had the people around me that were going to help me get there. So I would say for folks, just have the right people around you. And if people aren't good, just let them kind of like fade to black.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. If it wasn't for knowing Matt, getting involved with him, I would have. That's actually why I made this show. I would have given up on bodybuilding already. It was for the people I knew. So I think that is an absolute incredible statement. And telling them what exactly you want, being vocal about it, standing up for yourself. That's a tough thing for most people, especially when it comes to bodybuilding. You're looking at somebody who looks like a cartoon drawing, and you're just a normal person at that point. So just being clear on it, no matter how ridiculous it sounds, I think is super important. Killer.
You got to hold that belief for yourself all the time.
Love that. Well, Gerald, is it okay if anybody who's interested in watching, is it okay if they reach out to you if they have any questions or want to get to know you more?
Absolutely.
Cool.
Absolutely.
What's the best way that they could kind of reach out to you? What would you say is the best way?
I feel like Instagram's probably the safest thing these days.
Call him. Give
Call
out
him.
your number.
No.
He loves he'll do 30-minute counseling sessions for free. Help you sort your life out. Just call him.
Like Jim Mannion. No. We need your number.
We'll put his phone number in the description.
Yeah, no, Mannion would kill me. Like, Gerald, what the hell is wrong with you? What's wrong with you, Gerald? No, I would say Instagram is probably the best way to get a hold of me. I try and check it. I try and check it a little bit. It's actually interesting. My wife, she started this new business, and so she asked me to post something, and I was like, I don't really post anything anymore. And we had this whole discussion about me not posting things and how like detrimental that is to other people. And I was like, I just don't really. I mean, if I'm not on stage right now and I'm not actively doing things that are contributing to the industry in that way, then
it doesn't even matter.
Noah,
would he not, after you've talked to him now, he would be an Instagram celebrity if he put himself out there.
Oh, 100%.
I don't know if I want this thing. I don't know if I want to be out there like that. That's also the thing. I also like being my boss.
That's the thing. You don't need it. You don't need to do it.
No, I like being
So like, why I get it. Why I wouldn't do it either if I didn't need to. I do need to do it and I don't do
it. Yeah, I don't, anybody that comes to me and like wants to do something, I send to you.
Yeah.
And for me, like, I think a lot of the stuff, like I'll promote the book, but I'll tell people what's going on. Like, I generally feel like there are just so many folks that they just don't get good information. you know, and it's like there's such a clear path to what people want. And like, again, this is like me, like, you know, Neo in the Matrix, like seeing shit slow down, because it's like, oh, you want this, just do this. And it makes so much sense to me, but it seems so foreign for people, you know? So yeah, man.
Well, Gerald, that's where I think you could totally help the bodybuilding community. So, you know, if there's anything that you do want to get back involved in, I think giving direction to people like that is huge. You know, just like you said, some people don't see that. We're all, you know, this isn't the 90s, like you said. People are struggling, you know, there's not any security at the end of this kind of stuff. And you being able to kind of set your path right in all facets. You got your, you know, your goals accomplished in bodybuilding, you got your goals, you know, accomplished in business. I think that'd be extremely helpful for anybody. I know the stuff that I've learned right here is huge because I'm doing the same exact thing. Like, you know, as you know, anything in bodybuilding, it has to deal with your own manual labor. If you don't get injured, you still look good, organs don't explode. It's, you know, you need a plan, and a lot of us don't. So you're one of the very, very few that had that plan. And I think that's crazy unique. I know hearing your interview with Dave Palumbo, like that was, nobody else sounded like that. It was like, holy crap, this guy's on a different level. We don't hear people talking about that stuff. So that's totally a very unique thing that you have that, you know, you could definitely help people with.
Well, thank you. And yeah, I want to help as many people.
Cool. Appreciate that. And we'll end it here with Matt. Matt, any last takeaways or comments for anybody listening?
I don't know. I think the biggest takeaway is it's interesting how he, and not just him, anybody that you see is very successful kind of has his same outlook, how they come up, they have a goal, or they kind of think of things at the macro level at first, like, what is it that I want? And then he kind of reverse engineers from there. Whereas most people just kind of fly by the seat of their pants, and they want something, and they want something now. And he doesn't think of it that way. Anything that he just said was he had it all planned out. And then he didn't let anybody tell him any different. He's smart enough to come up with his own plan, learning from getting the information that he needed, and then coming up with his own plan, and then not deviating from it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All in. Sweet. Well, yeah. Matt, if anybody wants to reach out to you, be the next IFBB to Olympia stage, how do they how do they reach out to you?
In 2 years. I'll get you there in 2 years. That
Guaranteed.
Guaranteed 2 years or your money back. Should be my sales tactic. Instagram.
Yeah, proof my name here. Cool. Reaching out on Instagram. Well, awesome. Gerald, again, thank you so much for hopping on this. We're new here. So, you know, having somebody who's made it to the Olympia stage is just truly, really awesome. You've given us some key pointers here, not just in bodybuilding, but in life and in business. So, again, super appreciate you coming on here.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Cool. Awesome, Matt. And like always, I owe it all to you for getting me into this sport. And thank you so much for adding value as well with you know, all the stuff you've been through.
Yeah. I don't know if you owe it. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. That's yet to be determined, huh?
It's good.
Getting you into this shit.
Yeah. To talk about manifestation, Gerald, literally, I was like, I need somebody to help me out in bodybuilding. I worked out at this gym once in Des Moines, and I had an offer. I actually saw Matt at the gym, and I was like, holy shit, I want that guy to be my coach one day. He was my coach years later. He's such a specimen. Exactly. I was like, oh my God. And I had 2 job offers. I had one in Chicago and one in Des Moines. And I literally took the job in Des Moines, not even knowing if Matt lived there. And I was like, he better be there. And after even a year of working out at the same gym, I was like, all right, screw it. I'll ask him. And
surprisingly nice and congenial.
That's true. I love that. 100%. Everybody
Oh,
I
man,
talk to
guys.
about Matt, it's just like nicest guy ever. So
Yeah.
it's been awesome, and yeah, I do owe you for that. But with that, anybody, if you have any questions that you'd like us to answer, or if you want Gerald on again, we'll shake him down to get him on here. And again, Gerald, appreciate you a ton.
Cool. Thanks.
Sweet. All right, take care, everybody.
All right.